You wasn't hearing none of the background music, some of the music that we have from our younger days, our younger days, our younger days. Just played a little something for us. This is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., and it is wonderful to be with you as we're moving towards the end of 2025 for the comeback conversations with Dr. Clarke. Now, without further ado, let us check in with one of our favorite Bronxites. Miss Nicole Johnson, how is everything? It's probably not as chilly down there as is up here.
It's cold enough to make me unhappy.
Oh,
Uh, but life is good and we're making it to the end of the year, so I'm very grateful. Glad to be
excellent.
here as well. I'm actually
Excellent.
awake this week. I
Excellent.
apologize. Last week I fell asleep.
Oh, please. That was fine. That was fine. That was fine. Miss McIntyre, coming from the nice state of Florida. I know she's enjoying the little tinge of Brooklyn weather that we sent down there. How is everything with Miss McIntyre?
I am great. Thanks for asking. And I'm actually in New York, not
Oh,
enjo not enjoying the cold.
oh,
It reminds me why I left. I'm like, oh no. Oh no.
but it's great to hear your voice. Glad to have you here and appreciate you being with us. And let me go to my partner in life, partner in crime, all the stuff that she can't be compelled to tell a lawyer about that I've done. None other than the organizational leader, PhD person herself, Miss. what was the group name? Color Me Bad from New Jack City. We can't say the song because I don't want to make her blush, even though I doubt we're going to see her on camera today. But none other than Dr. Cheryl Clarke.
Good evening, good afternoon, blessing,
Good afternoon. Which part
wherever
of the
people
country
may
you
be,
are?
wherever people may be in the world. This is
Oh,
going global, right?
that's true. That's true. That's true. That is
And you
true.
are recording, so they may be looking at this at a different time, a different space. So I want to make sure your audience is greeted properly. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. I am the other half of the dynamic duo of the Clarks,
Mm.
Dr. Gregory Clarke. I'm his other beautiful half. What would he do without me, half? Dr. Cheryl Clarke. So, God bless.
Nicole said you fancy now. So you
I've
fancy?
always been, I've always been fancy.
You
So don't put the now in there. It's always been fancy.
not bougie, just fancy.
Okay, I'm going on mute now.
No, because the reason why I say that this past weekend, myself and Dr. Cheryl decided to take a look at The Reckoning. And before we get into the teaching, which is about our voice, it was a very interesting. We had to do it over 2 days. We broke it up. But she had her thoughts, and just like I had my thoughts. And I would love to open up the floor to see if anyone here took the opportunity to catch it so that maybe we can have a little conversation about it before we get into the teaching. Nothing long, just your own respective insight and thoughts about that particular documentary. Because I definitely have my thoughts. I definitely have my thoughts.
Um, I'll kick it off.
Go ahead.
The Reckoning was an indictment of
Ooh, like that.
life in the early 80s to the 90s where people people want an opportunity. If
Mm,
there's something available, I want to get it. And then once they get it, they're like, oh, I don't want to share it. What's
mm.
for me is for me, and what's for you is also for me. And that can lead to your downfall. Now, speaking specifically about Mr. Combs's action,
Hmm.
it was a combination of what I think is a humiliation ritual to make people realize their place,
Mm.
And it's sad from watching the documentary, it seems that his sons may have decided that this is the role they also want to play. So we have to pay attention to the example we're giving and who we choose to be around. And I'm complete.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Dr. Cheryl, what were some of your insights and thoughts as we watched together and, we had conversations as well in regards to, what we were experiencing? Because we grew up in that era. We remember those eras. And, we're not looking at it from secondhand accounts. We're looking at it from firsthand accounts. So what was your thoughts as we watched that particular documentary, those four parts?
A couple of things for me that stood out. First off, um, we had a long discussion, myself and my husband, about the domestic violence of it all, the DV portion.
Hmm.
Um, Domestic violence is very real. The domestic violence of it all, the piece of the puzzle is that there are grown people in this situation that until they come to the end of their rope, they will stay in a situation like numerous women did with Sean, and the patterns you have to be able to get out of it. So, but that is a choice. And like to Nicole's point, when you look at celebrity, when you're looking at getting your foot in the door, when you're looking at doing those things in that area, it is important for us to understand that we do have choices. But it's also, why do we emotionally and physically stay with someone that harms us? So that's the part that I saw with power, the imbalancing of power, financial control, staying in this trauma thing that it keeps you hold. So as much as I looked at this and for my clinical hat, is that there's been multiple women that have been in a relationship with um, Sean. And these are patterns that I believe, even with his own self, he got to the point where he abused his power in regards to who he was as a boss. And even if you look at the DV portion of that, he just did not um, abuse the women in his life. He also abused some of his workers.
Mm.
Verbal abuse. There was physical abuse. Those are things that we have to look at domestically and how we can abuse power. And rarely do you live in a space that you're able to see that, and people can able to say, how can I, you know, see this as a learning pad? So I would like people to look at what did they learn and maybe put insight that I may be going through this right now where I am. And you may not know that you're going through it. So then you should reach out to get help, because a lot of us isolate. And that's what happened with a lot of um, domestic violence things. They are in isolation. Secondly, the other layer was the exposure to um, his children, things that he was doing. I think that is very impressionable, and we got to be very careful how we parent. But then again, you have to look at who he is, and even from his childhood, gave me a lot of insight. Just like I had a lot of insight when it came down to Donald Trump. Your formative years of how you're raised, it really, really, really would be a telltale of how you are. And Janice Cohn was that that parent that nurtured that in him,
Mm.
that nurtured, you're the king. you better do it, all of that. So we just got to be very cognizant of the fact of looking at it from awareness and saying, okay, how can I learn from this? And that's my take.
Thank you for that. That was powerful. And for those of you who joined us, I see Mr. William Richards has joined us as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're talking about the Netflix documentary about Sean Puff Daddy Diddy Combs, and it was called The Reckoning. They got footage a couple of days before he was formally arrested, and it gave you some insight into who he was as a person in 2000, September 2024. And then they went backwards to show, how he started to become this. So even if you have, access to your AIs, if you may not have seen it as of yet, there's probably enough footage out there that you can ask your assistant to assist you in the conversation. And as I will share my thoughts, one of the things that made me that made me very, how should I say, uncomfortable, even as a male, was the fact of, as Dr. Cheryl alluded to, you can see some of the grooming that started with him from his parents' possibility, especially his father died very young. He didn't really grow up with his father, and his mother kind of ingratiated him into a particular area or a particular vernacular, and then recognized that, you know, he had no siblings. So, she poured all her energy into that. And you can see the aspects where that may not necessarily be a good thing, even if you only have one child. There are ways that you can give, a little 5 or 6 year old child shouldn't be walking around in a fur coat or walking around like they looking like a pimp, or, you know, putting them in areas or creating an atmosphere as if like they're the man in the house, which is like almost, I know I've learned this from Dr. Cheryl, and almost as if you're creating an enabling situation. And or almost like, you're making the child moving into adult ways and adult spaces in a way where that can come back to counteract you. You skip so many steps that when it's time for you to, like, whoa, 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 you got to go back and revisit some of these things. And now you're either a teenager, or as he started going into Howard University and, decided to drop out because, he was into the entertainment field. He wanted to get himself into entertainment. That's another aspect of it. And so to see the timeline of how he has handled not only himself, but women, this whole situation with Cassie wasn't something that just popped out of nowhere. This wasn't a situation where it's like, oh my God, let's clutch our pearls. That when CNN got a hold of that footage and released it to the world, that changed the dynamic. That went from people saying, oh, Cassie could be just doing this for the money, until you saw that footage, which, they say men can lie, women can lie. Numbers and footage, what you can literally see with your eyes, does not lie. And that was such a disgusting display. No one could sit there like, oh, how can you defend that? There's no defense in that. Same way a man should never be putting his hands on a woman shouldn't be putting her hands on a man. I mean, there's, women, people in a relationship will joke and, do those things where, it's still in a space of, there's some space of jovialness. But it should never get to the space where you feel that you're that empowered or that comfortable to say, oh, I can just put my hands on you without, someone checking you. And it reminds me a little bit of the R. Kelly situation. Like, where were the governors? Where were the people to sit there and say, you know, yo, you shouldn't be doing this? But then come to find out, if you've seen the documentary, you know, the way he treated people who helped him get to the top, the way he treated some of the people who assisted him, and then you're sitting there like, God, my God. I mean, just some of the things that, I'd rather not express, because I don't want to how should I say, taint your image because I desire for you to make sure that if you get an opportunity to catch that documentary, to, come to your own determination. And that's why when me and Dr. Cheryl started having our conversation, she was looking at it from the DV aspect. I was looking at it from the aspect of power as well, because usually they say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he allowed the space where, I guess he got so emboldened by the fame that it made him feel untouchable. And all the things that maybe he should have gotten, those hands smacked on him from the 90s and certain other charges and certain other things going all the way back to City College. Maybe if some of those things would have put, not so much limited him, but would have put a governor on him, maybe it wouldn't have moved to the space. But he kept moving through a particular vernacular where he kept getting away with stuff or not having to take responsibility. And that's not necessarily a space in life that most people have the opportunity to live at. So it's almost like that rarefied air. Once you taste that rarefied air, you don't want to come. It's like a high that you don't want to come down from. And so, any other thoughts or any other possibilities anyone else wishes to throw into the conversation in regards to, not only about the reckoning, but as we're simulating this conversation before we move on to other subjects. Anyone else? Floor is open. Floor is open. If not, we would definitely take advantage of that. And so I'll say again, if you haven't got an opportunity to see it, I would love for you to see it from your own lens. See, we desire not to give you the rose-colored glasses here. It's always better to come from an independent space, a space where you are establishing what your viewpoint is. Instead of just saying, oh, I heard what these people said, and that's my viewpoint. That means you're easily impressionable, and you should always move from a space where you're allowing your ability to deductively reason happen. So with that being said, we're going to go into the tonight's teaching. Let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. And Dr. Shaw, can you see my screen?
When you say yeah.
Okay, can you read this slide, please? It's Dr. Cheryl there. Hello, 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 hello.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can see it on my phone. Your voice is the value. We grow because you show up. We rise as one, or we don't rise. Oh, I got to do this way. Or we don't rise at all by Dr. Gregory. Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr. I just had to flip my phone and it just became larger.
No, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And as you can see in this title slide, we have a beautiful woman who has the mic, and everyone else is waiting for her to recognize that she's not really just speaking for herself, but she's speaking as part of the community. At times, you're speaking as part of a team. When you start to recognize, even when you're in an entrepreneurial standpoint, if you're a true entrepreneur, you're not moving in a space where it's all about just you. Because if that's the case, then you're just creating a glorified job. But when you're moving in a space that you're creating a possibility or a landing space where others can be blessed by based upon your gifts, your talents, your services, what it is you may be offering as a product, then you start to recognize there's value in that. And it always starts with the voice. What is it that we're uttering? As we have learned and been expressed, everything starts from that logos. It starts in the word. What is it that you're declaring? And then after you declare it, you have the ability to manifest, and it starts to become an essential part of who you are becoming.